Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the 254th meeting of the Equal Employment Practices Commission. Executive Director Jean Victor, can you please do a roll call of the commissioners?
Yes, Chair and Commissioner Bonilla,
Present.
Vice Chair and Commissioner Reese,
Here.
and Commissioner Alcantara.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum. Just making a note that we are transmitting live on YouTube channel in compliance with open meetings law. And next, if we can have a motion to approve the minutes.
I move to approve the meeting minutes of December 16th, 2021.
We have a motion from Commissioner Reese. Do we have a second? Commissioner Alcantara seconds. All in favor? All opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion to approve the minutes passes with no corrections. Next, we have old business. We have the 2022 proposed meeting schedule, which you all should have in front of you. It's the calendar for 2022. And we do not meet in March. We do not meet in August. We do not meet in October. I'm reviewing, actually, we don't have to take a vote on this.
We don't.
No, we don't.
We don't,
Just-
but
If
it
there's
was-
any concerns.
Yeah, we were asked to revise the calendar at the last meeting and present it to the version of it.
And these revisions reflected what, like not meeting and all this, right? Because summer,
And changing the December date,
changing the December date. Okay,
but it's substantially similar to the previous months.
so at any point, if there's any dates that don't work for people, just let us know. Next, we have the 2022 to 2025 EEPC quadrennial plan. And that plan is
It's the same as last,
this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
we just never got a formal vote approving the plan from the board.
So this is basically the calendar or the schedule, if you will, of the different agencies that will be audited between 2022 and 2025. And we require a formal vote on this plan. So do I have a motion to approve the 2022 to 2023 EEPC quadrennial plan?
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Alcantara. Do we have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Reese seconds. All in favor? All opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion to approve the EPC quadrennial plan passes. Do we have any new business? For new business, I'd just like to reiterate the article that was emailed to the commissioners and the EPC exec staff on a conversation on an issue that we've had a substantial discussion on about 2 months ago, if I recall, at the EPC meeting. So that we were kind of already, this type of issue was already on our radar. The idea that, 2,950 community board members throughout New York City operate as an advisory capacity, doing business on behalf of the city, but yet they currently do not fall under, or at least not communicated to them, or it's not clear what do they fall under in terms of compliance around sexual harassment prevention training, or as the commissioner mentioned earlier too, any kind of trainings around discrimination, racial, gender, otherwise, and how this commission, this body, in relation to the sexual harassment nature of not only this article, but just what we know in general, will hold compliance around sexual harassment prevention training to include community board members when we look at community boards. So that we look at district staff, which are usually the district manager, the coordinator, or assistant district manager. But really the workplace climate very much driven and informed by the other 50 members that comprise the board. It's something that we're going to look into further in relation to the kind of obstacles or challenges around that and try to work through them in relation to the audit, but more importantly, in relation to moving the needle on folks not feeling that there's no recourse for them when there's type of discrimination is alleged and what kind of processes they might be able to avail themselves. Any questions and the article just helps kind of like punctuate that, right? But it's important to note that this board had discussed this about 2 months ago, even prior to it, type of media coverage on it. Commissioner Reese?
I have a question. When you look at, when you audit the community boards, do you also audit their complaint files? Or do they have a system for getting?
So they don't handle their own complaint files. Any complaints you have would go to the borough president's EEO office, and they do the investigation and handle the complaint.
Okay, do we then look at those complaints, let's just use community board 7, because that's mine. So if there's a complaint on community board 7, and someone's gone to Gail Brewer's office with it, you know, at that point, being the borough president, as mentioned in this article, saying, goes on, do we follow through or auditing to see what the nature of those complaints were?
No, we do not.
Should we, is my question.
Well,
should we, can we? Yeah. 2 questions.
What we do is when we review the borough president's office, we review their practices and we make sure that they're following their complaint investigation procedures. But we've never necessarily looked for trends in terms of how many sexual harassment versus how many gender based or what. We haven't ever really done that kind of analysis. I don't think it's off the table. I think our mandate is pretty broad. But that's not something we've ever really looked into specific complaints for specific people.
Well, I'm going to ask the chair, given your concern about the members of the community boards and and just reading this article, it looks like it's members that it's either the chair of the board or members that have engendered that complaint. Should we as look at community boards, make our life a little more difficult, but follow through? So how would we know that there's been a complaint from community board 7? We'd have to go to the borough president because community board itself is not going to be correct.
Correct.
So again, I guess the response to my question is, when you do the borough president's audit the next time, you're going to want them to break down by community boards where they have had complaints, and then we will audit those as to what the type of complaint it was. The only way we're going to know whether or not there is discriminatory activity at community board 7, either against women or Black or sexual harassment, is by going through Gail Brewer's records.
Yeah, well, this is so this is where our commission has to help the city and others, right? Because I say I'm a community board member of community board 7, right? And I want to say that there's a complaint that I want to lodge around discrimination, let's say, of Latinos. And I go to the borough president's office. Depending on the borough president, maybe depending on the borough, they may very well read the charter and say you're not an employee, so therefore you cannot lodge a complaint. In which case there will be no files or no nothing. Right? And it would vary. Maybe Bronx does it different than that. So then they say, so okay, I'm not an employee. Then I think the language somewhere is that then the Commission of Human Rights is able to take complaints, right? It's not necessarily of just employees, but of just residents in general. So that somehow these individuals might be referred to the Commission of Human Rights. However, in my dealings with the Commission of Human Rights too, there's an issue there whether they feel that they are the appropriate body for that too, because I think they may say, well, they might say you're an employee or you're doing business in Dow City, you have to go to the borough president's office. So it's like this, whoever may have a complaint, it's like a ping pong. They're like given different information at different boroughs by different administrations or different city agencies. And I guess that's what we need to not only raise the issue, but try to seek out clarity. as just, procedurally,
Well, I think first we need to find out if it really is a problem. It is conceivable, since they said this article says that the complaints went to Bill's office. So the question is, did the borough president keep copies of those complaints? An issue.
Another question, in New York, they don't have a New York Commission Against Discrimination.
Yeah, there's a New York State.
So probably that's where they would go, because as a citizen, if you have a discrimination complaint, normally that's the place that people send you. The question is, now, the issue is, if it is in the state, then we don't have to receive. So that makes it even harder.
And we need clarity. I mean, in this case, right, the borough president's office, in terms of what was conveyed in the article, conducted like a 7-month investigation and substantiated the claims, but offered as instead of removing the individual, recommended training. Actually, that's the same recommended the training that this body here, the EPC, is going to audit that, everyone takes. And in this situation, I think the author here is saying that, there needs to be more transparency around allegations that were substantiated and whether people follow through on whatever recommendations were in terms of, response, and that be documented. That how do we know that this individual they're not taking any kind of training? Right, if I get the gist of it.
Yes, but then there is a section, if you go to page 2 of the same article, it goes on to say, there was a complaint in the brewer's office in May 2021, and nothing seems to have been taken care of that. So, I
Well, that's another aspect of the work, right? So when there's a claim, I think this individual is not speaking about something. The second claim is not something that was offered by them. They're speaking hearsay as to a claim of someone else made.
Right.
When someone else makes a claim, there's no, you only have to communicate with the claimant and the person that is alleged to have made the thing. No one else, when the findings come out, no one else needs to be made.
I
a proof.
agree.
So this individual may or may not know
What-
because they're not in a position to.
But that's what they say here, that exactly the point that you had made before, 2 months ago or now. That is, they fall in this limbo category.
Correct.
Now, my question is, when you're doing city, and I'm not, when you do city business on behalf of the city, even when you're a volunteer, aren't you like a state actor or a city actor, because you're representing the city's business? Well, then you get protection in some way or form?
You should.
Because this sounds like it doesn't, but I find it weird.
Yeah, this is what I mentioned. I don't know if you had a chance to look into it, but this is where it falls under the public officers law. The public officers law that may give us some further insight to this.
It's my understanding that, if you have a complaint, you don't necessarily need to be an employee. You could be an intern, you can be a vendor, you could be an applicant. So perhaps the volunteers would fall under that same category. Now, as to what's actually happening at the borough president's offices, we'll find that out because we're auditing 4 out of 5 this year. So we'll be able to kind of get an idea of what the relationship is, what they do and do not track, and how they handle those things. And that might be able to inform our decisions on how we're going to audit to make sure that.
And should copy all community boards saying that you're going to be looking at it. Copy each of the borough presidents.
Of course.
Those community boards, so they're aware that there's anyone to check in. You're going to look at them as well.
For the audits themselves, we always copy the borough president and the borough president's EO officer on the preliminary final determination, all of it, because they're ultimately responsible for the EO program. So we absolutely will copy them as well.
Just getting back to the chair's point, about how, how it's laid out in terms of who can file a complaint and who can't. It should be in a policy. So they should have a policy that sets forth everything that can and cannot be done. And generally speaking, anybody that is on site whether we, as was said before, can file a complaint. Anybody that is a volunteer, whether paid or unpaid, should be able to file a complaint. They don't really draw a distinction because they want the workplace to remain safe.
Yes, absolutely. And I think I also, it's important, I might have conflated earlier too, that the aspect that mentions employees more specifically is the law around who's mandated to take the sexual harassment prevention training or the other trainings. And that's the one where it's, you have to be. But, so this is something we've identified already. I know we decided to make some progress in this regard. Next order, is there any other new business? Next order of business is the audit update, the 2022 AP audit development.
As I mentioned earlier, we are still working on getting this audit off the ground. Yesterday we had a very long meeting to set deadlines for all of the different steps that have to go into getting the audit software and administrative things set up. But the audit, we anticipate being able to initiate 18 of these audits the end of February. And then the remaining community board audits somewhere around July 1. So that's our plan. We're going to bifurcate the initiation, which is not something that's normally done. Usually we do all of the audits initially at the beginning of the year. But if we know we're not going to get to the community boards till later, it doesn't make sense to initiate now and then follow up in 6 months. It's not really going to be conducive to us, having a good working relationship. So that is the plan as of now. We are all working diligently behind the scenes to get the audit standards and the compliance criteria and the process and the program up and running. So that when we do initiate after that, it's a seamless transition for our analysts to make their findings and work with the agencies as needed.
And that will get you the number, the mandated numbers. If you meet the February day, then the July 1 day, you should be able to.
That's always our goal. And I think it is a realistic goal because community board audits don't generally take as long. That may change if we change the nature of our audit, but traditionally they don't take that long. So February and July I don't think is going to be a detriment to us making our numbers.
And it's important not to understate the Herculean, task and effort before the EEPC staff. It looks like there's 34 agencies queued up for 2022's audit.
That's right.
And that's a lot of agencies, some of them large, some of them medium, some of them micro or smaller, but given that the EEPC staff is down a certain amount of people, right, and the amount of work that lays ahead in regards to everything else that we want to do. And I know the executive director wants to visit some agencies, even outside the audit cycle, right? Sometimes too much time goes by. It's a lot of work, so I don't want to understate.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Generally made it look easy in terms of meeting the audit targets sometimes, but it's not easy, and we probably need to be prepared for the possibility that there will be delays or hurdles ahead.
We will try our best as a team, we always do, but there is a lot of, it's a whole new audit too, which also lengthens the process because we have to create audit standards and the criteria and the source, the questions that we need to ask during our preliminary interview questionnaires to get the information we need to answer the questions of the status of whether or not they met the audit standard. So all of that needs to be created, and then once that's created, it has to be set up in all of our computer systems that we use to, streamline the audits themselves for compliance monitoring and during the audit process. So yes, it is a lot of work, but we are, like every other year, we're going to diligently work to get as much done and so that we can try to make our numbers. That's always the goal.
In addition to all the work that you laid out, as Commissioner Reese mentioned, I think Commissioner Alcantara also mentioned this at some point, the clear, concise communication with the agencies and the commissioners about expectations and about timeline, about our partnership is, is equally important. So it's a both and, I hope that there's enough, staffing, capacity size, so that we can keep the kind of communications that we need to different agencies.
That was about what I was gonna add. That will be new this year, that we have not done before. We will be sending out welcome letters to the new agency heads between now and February 21st. We will also be scheduling 2 webinars for agency heads and 2 webinars for EEO professionals between the weeks of February 28th and March 7th, so that we can explain the process, give them an idea of what they can expect, what we will be asking of them.
Gene, I would suggest that not only do the agency head, but anybody they designate, so to choose that we really have the person who will be doing the paperwork, if you will. Because I can't imagine that the police commissioner is going to look at it. And someone within their department will be responsible.
Yes.
So the invitation would be to the agency, and then the person makes designated responsible.
Yes.
In addition to the, so.
And the training is to establish the criteria for them to understand the criteria, or?
Well, in many cases, they would not be aware of the fact that we exist. That,
So the new police commissioner, a woman who's come from, I think, Baltimore, probably has no sense at all, that we exist. And someone within that it must be a deputy who knows us, has dealt with us, and we will see officers, but you really want to be sure that you reach everybody. And to the extent that this is a new audit, it is now about promotion within the department. They want to understand where we're going and what we're looking for.
Yeah.
So it's all of that.
If no further discussion, no objections, I'll go to agenda item number 6 on compliance update. Subsection A, the status of the 2021 audit plan compliance monitor.
This is a very brief update. We have one of our last audits on the agenda for a vote up next. And we have one other agency, their compliance monitoring ends in February 11th, I believe. But other than that, we've gotten all of our other entities completed, and we've issued compliance with resolutions to all but one, which we see partial, and we're doing a follow-up audit of them this year.
Now, this is Commissioner Reese's favorite topic, but for full transparency, the February 11th extension in the city council.
That's correct.
And the reason for the extension, a reason for the extension, which may or may not be enough of a reason, right, for everyone, is that in the interim, this is, otherwise would have been a partial, right, seemed like, but in the interim, a new speaker, majority new city council has been elected and took office on January 1st. It was more prudent, determined to continue this dialogue with the new leadership and the new members in anticipation that their background and knowledge and sensitivity of these issues may be different than the previous speaker, I think, and this was an opportunity to continue engaging. And if there's anything that EEPC needs, not only with the new city council, but with city agencies, is open dialogue and engagement to the extent that, we can establish this. And February 11th is right around the corner. We will not know relatively short how different this is. We've also have put an invitation out to the speaker to meet with them, or soon will send a letter out. So we hope to be meeting with the speaker of the city council or their designated staff, as well as the new, is this an agenda item? I don't want to step on it. But we also sent out communications to the new chair of the city council's oversight committee on civil rights and on civil human rights, and the new chair of the city council's commission on gender equity, so that they both know about President Center. Commissioner Reese?
I ask that we send a separate letter to the new chair of the city council asking for the status on the appointment of the 2 city council members since this is a, important undertaking of the city, and whatever may have happened administratively under the last chair, somehow is not, is it a suspense file or whatever, however you want to deal with it, but that it is important to us that we have it, because otherwise there is a burden on the three members to always be present. And if one of us, heaven forbid, has COVID, this, we can't have.
Yes, yes. To be included in a letter, but also to be included as an agenda item for our meeting. Absolutely. I know that that burden has unduly fallen on Commissioner Reese, having been part of this commission throughout a time when there was only been three members. So, next we have section B of the subsection B under section 6, 2021 compliance resolution 1 vote. This is a resolution for Richmond County Public Administrator. Is the Executive Director Gene Victor or General Trump leads the resolution up?
I didn't like it.
All right, yes.
So resolution number 2021 AP/254-945-2021 C52 Richmond County Public Administrator determination of compliance.
I move to approve resolution 2021-AP/254-945, 2021. C52.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second? So a motion by Commissioner Reese, seconded by Commissioner Alcantara. All in favor of the resolution, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay. All in favor? I'm sorry, no nay. No. All any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. My apologies. Next we have item agenda 7, research update. Subsection A, local law 13, report status update.
Right, so, as you know, we've submitted to you for review a draft of our report for local law 13. To be the second report in the series of 10. I've received comments from each of the commissioners, and I'm in the process of incorporating those comments as well as preparing executive summary, making other changes within the report to make the report as effective as possible. The goal is to try to have this report completed before its due date of February 15th. Working diligently to do that.
So, Gene, will we have a draft before February 15th of what you're doing so that we can, to choose the expression, re-comment and make it like even more difficult than the visual is?
Yeah, and I object to that, but you're making my life more difficult because these comments are extremely helpful. Yes, of course, before anything is finalized, it will be resubmitted as a draft.
So our meeting is not until the year after.
This is correct.
If necessary, we could provide the next.
Yes, I think an executive item will be to discuss this more as a work product, so it will need the executive session definitions, but we'll discuss more of this in the executive session. Next, we have subsection B, public hearing status update.
So we are still continuing to plan to have a public hearing this spring. There, in the interim between January 1 and now, there's been a request that we identify funds from our budget to send back to the city. Those funds were most likely will be coming from the budget that we have for the public hearing. Notwithstanding, I think it's probably best if we have a remote session for public hearing, much like what we're doing with our meetings today. I'm proposing that we have at least 2 sessions, reserved for internal personnel, one session for EEPC to explain who we are, what we do, how we do it, what the audit is, what to expect. Another section for DCAS, so they can also have some opportunity to explain how we work together, what their needs for the affirmative action plan are, and how that comes together when we perform our audit, what all that means. And we will also be having our expert speakers to talk about underutilization, which would be the topic of this year's public hearing. We are currently looking for speakers right now. Because we would be handling the public hearing remotely, we wouldn't need to have money set aside for a venue and for lunches, but we should still be able to provide an honorarium for the speakers that we get. So we're looking to get like 2 to 3 speakers with us.
But you could, because professors are teaching remotely, it should be relatively easy to get them to talk. So that expands your venue of people who teach in this area, teach about the organization. I mean, actually, it opens it up because you don't have to worry about paying for transcontinental air. I knew have names at the top of my head, I don't. But it might be very interesting to look at some of the law school professors and see to see whether there's someone who has looked at this. And you could probably look at them locally and not even have to know them. But you may be able to find someone that are willing to do it and who may not need as huge an honorarium as others might. Anyway, thank you. I did, it dawned on me it would be, you would have to give some money back. And that is the likeliest place.
But I also think that with the present COVID situation, people are not really rushing to go to a public venue anyway. So it really, to me, made more sense that we do it remotely.
I think that's a very good idea. I really endorse it.
The letter that we sent to OMB, do the commissioners have a copy of it?
I do not think so,
So
because that was more of an internal, we will make sure you get a copy of it. It was a letter that we were required to send to OMB to identify the source of funding.
So I think that's it for public session. Nothing else for public session. Is there a motion to adjourn public session and go into executive session?
I so move.
Commissioner Reese moves. Is there a second? Commissioner Alcantara seconds. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Abstentions? Hearing none, we will be going into executive session.